please sit down.
The President, the Chamber is now back in session. And we have our witness, Mr. Francois Bizot. We will continue his testimony. Before we continue that, we would like to inform to all parties who have the right to pose questions to either witnesses or experts or civil parties. I would like to remind all of you that do not pose repeated questions. In the case of taking turns to question the person, you should obtain the information from the previous person, so in order to avoid the repeated questions. Secondly, you are also reminded that don't pose questions which are not relevant to the facts or which are least concerned to the facts. This is in order to ensure proper conduct of the proceedings. We also observed some questions are not well prepared. A lot of talking, 5 to 10 minutes talking, and then only a question is at the end of the talk. So please prepare your questions properly for any witness or the accused or the civil party or the expert, so that they can understand the questions clearly and respond to the questions accordingly. Mr. Hong Kam Soon, do you have any further questions, or you already finished your questioning? Please clarify. Make sure your questions are straightforward and short, so that the witness can understand your questions and can respond appropriately. Secondly, it is up to his ability to respond, because the facts was over 30 years ago, and you all are aware of that. You probably would not recollect what happened to you personally 30 years ago, so it's up to a certain limit of the recollection related to the facts that we will have in the future as well. Thank you, Mr. President, says the lawyer, and thank you for your reminder. As I have said, sometimes the issue of translation is not consistent. Let me put 3 further questions to Mr. Francois Bizot. Before the break, he said he knew or have heard Duch when he was detained in a house for about 2 hours. Let me put a question to Mr. Bizot. Besides the name Duch that you just raised before the break, regarding the witnesses with the pseudonyms, do I need to use the same name or use the pseudonyms? I don't think it is necessary. So, besides the person you talked, the person was tall, white complexioned, was a member in that camp of M13. Was he in a similar rank to Duch?
François Bizot. If I've understood your question correctly, you're asking me about this person, and I specifically mentioned that I believe that this person was not the deputy of the accused. I brought this up, but the physical, as I said, the physical correspondence between this is not satisfactory. So I don't think that only the accused, I think, would be able to answer this question clearly. In fact, and I cannot say anything more about this.
Thank you, says the lawyer. My second question. Regarding your colleagues, Son and Lai, you said Duch decided to release them when you were released. However, they were not released. Did you know your colleagues, Son and Lai, were executed or were released after you were released?
François Bizot. It's hard for me to answer this specifically. They were detached, well, they're unchained at the same time as me. And I think I already answered this question when I said that they were going to enjoy the freedom in the liberated zone. Enjoy freedom, so to speak, in the liberated zone. And I don't think that this was the case. Not that they were not unchained, that I don't know exactly, but however, they were executed a little while afterwards, maybe a year later, or more or less, but I am unable to specify if they were still chained up or if they were not. If that was what you were asking.
Thank you, says the lawyer. After your release from M13, did you still have any contact with Duch?
François Bizot. No, for the very simple reason that I thought that he was dead, as so many other revolutionaries. It was only when he was arrested that I learned that he was still alive, and then he was detained, and then I had the opportunity to visit him at the military prison where he was detained.
Thank you, says the lawyer. My last questions. You made your statements to the co-investigating judges on the 22nd January 2008 on page 6 of the 40 document. You stated that there was an order from the upper echelon to execute them. Them means Lai and Son. About 1 or 2 years later, if you had no contact with Duch, how did you know about the deaths of these two colleagues? Thank you.
François Bissot, it is because Duch revealed this. It is precisely because Duch revealed this to me that I was able to know this when I went to visit him at the military prison. He told me then.
I have no more questions. Thank you, says the lawyer, the president. I would now give the floor to the defense counsel to pose questions to the witness, Mr. François Bizot. If you have, the floor is yours.
Maître Roux. Thank you, Mr. President. Hello, Mr. Bizot. A lot of things have already been said, so I don't have that many questions. But maybe I have a specific question concerning this deputy of Duch. We asked him, if I give you the name Hokim Hem, aka Sum, would that possibly be the person, this deputy? Could that be the person? Hokim Em does not mean anything to me, but I cannot say. So, Maître Roux, I'm going to ask you a few questions concerning your comments on previous statements that you made, in particular with the co-investigating judges who interviewed you on the basis of your book. And I would like to have your comments on this. In your book, on page yes. On page 115, 116 in the French version, you indicate that Duch was only executing, only implementing Ankar's decisions. And in the same way, the judges asked you specifications on this, and you answered in Index 240, I believe that his margin of maneuver was absolutely nil, and he did not have anything else to do than to obtain information from the people who were arrested and concerning whom he would write reports. And these people were condemned from the start. And the idea was to make them speak before executing them in order to justify their arrest, and so that their arrest would not be useless. So I would like to ask you, do you have anything to add to this? And again, at the end of your statement with the co-investigating judges, you added, I see here, that you are asking me if, as a conclusion, I have a general observation to formulate, and I would say simply that the Khmer Rouge regime was a regime of terror, and that it was probably very difficult to those who had a position in this regime to backtrack. So do you have any comments to make, Mr. Bizot, on this? Mr. Bizot, I have nothing to add to what I said during my interview with the co-investigating judges. I believe that indeed this no longer needs to be demonstrated. The Khmer Rouge regime was a regime of terror. And concerning myself, well, and concerning my release, I never saw that these decisions were made at Duch's level. These decisions were made at the higher level. Council Roux, thank you. So, let's continue the question, this question of terror. You spoke more specifically about Duch himself in your book, but also with the co-investigating judges. And you were saying, getting back to this idea that he was just locked up in this terrible mechanism that in his work, Duch, and you add in your book, page 186, also fear was in him as elsewhere, as everywhere. He was from the chiefs that he was dealing with all the way down to the simple militiamen. Fear was reigning everywhere. In the same way, in the pages that were read to you by Judge Lavergne on page 185, I would like to go over another passage again. You write that what I liked about him, what I liked about his being, which generosity had not left, was maybe this presence of constant suffering that would determine his features as well as his shadow. And you're speaking about fear, and you're speaking about suffering, constant suffering, in fact. And you speak about this again when you make your statement with the co-investigation judges on page 5 of Index D40, and you say that I wish to stress that if the guards were fearing Duch, and that the prisoners were living in a state of terror, Duch was also a victim of fear. In particular, I believe that his contention with Tamok concerning over me followed Duch for years. Duch was afraid of Tamok. That's what you declared to the co-investigating judges. So I'd like to have your comments on this fear, on this suffering that you have apparently witnessed. Franck tried to remember to recollect the images that are in front of me when I try to remember M13 without recollecting as well at the same time this atmosphere, this terrifying atmosphere of fear and death. Nor can I do this without remembering how much this atmosphere came across through the accused. Fear was everywhere, and with everyone. And I don't think that it's easy to imagine that it can be otherwise. When Duch would go to his meetings and come back from them, his face, his expression would clearly show a great amount of suffering that I could not disconnect from the topic that he had been talking about with the superiors during these meetings. I clearly understood that it was always a question of deciding on the moment of an execution that had already been programmed, and at no moment there there were light topics in the life of the camp leader as well as his deputies. So this constant presence of executions, of killing, and of torture could not have any effects that you could even see physically on their expressions. Council Hu, thank you. And now I'm coming to your release and to the risks that Duch took to release you. And on page 140 in the French edition of your book, and you also mentioned this to the co-investigating judges, but I'd like to go back to the excerpt from your book. I did not know if he was really convinced of my innocence, but on behalf of the revolutionary, in the name of the revolutionary principles to which he was so devoted, it was necessary for him to demonstrate his authentic attachment to justice. And I suddenly understood the enormous risk that he took by gambling on my innocence. But even more so than the sympathy he felt for me, what this resolution betrayed was a passionate quest for moral righteousness that resembled a quest for the absolute. Duch was among these pure, among these fervent idealists who were seeking the truth above all. And you retranslate in the same state of mind the conversation that you had, or at least in an approximate way, the conversation that you had during your release. And he asked you, okay, are you now reassured? And I answered, yes. It's on page 224 and 225 of the French. Yes, I answered, thank you, comrade. I owe you my life. That's what you say to Duch. And he answered to you, I only acted in agreement with my consciousness. And I acted with complete certainty. And he adds that in any case, at my modest level, I only gave an opinion while trying to influence the final outcome, of course. So, what you are translating here, Mr. Bizot, does this correspond to what you experienced back then? Can you confirm this before the chamber, that this is a good mirror of what you experienced back then? Mr. Bizot, I'm no longer on an emotional basis here. Here I am remembering. I remember this very clearly, indeed. I remember as well that he was extremely nervous and fearful. He was fearing an ambush, in fact. And on the way that I had to follow to leave what probably was a house on the outskirts of Omléang, where this beaten up 403 Peugeot was waiting for me to bring me away. Duch was worried, and he was fearing an ambush from his superior, Tamok, who, of course, was not in favor of my release. And I remember clearly that he did not support the fact of having released me, so therefore that he had presented to his superiors. I remember that he did not, that Tamok had not supported this.
Monsieur Bizot.
Mr. Roux. Mr. Bizot, when you answered a variety of highly relevant questions put by the lawyers of the civil parties, and in particular I'm referring to the last question put by my colleague Mr. Cannon, you used words that expressed very deep human feeling, empathy for the victims. Furthermore, throughout all these debates, you have spoken from a very deep sense of humanity in respect of Duch. On behalf of the defense, I would like to thank you, Mr. Bizot, for this major contribution that you have offered here to the work of justice. Thank you, Your Honor.
The President, do you have any question? The President, thank you, Mr. Francois Bizot, for your testimony. As summoned by the Chamber has no further questions to ask you. You can now retire to listen to the hearing if you wish, or you can go back to your residence. Court officer, please accompany him to leave the courtroom. And now we would like to invite another witness, KW30, to enter the courtroom. The President. Is your name Uchson? The witness. My name is Uchson. The President. How old are you this year? I am 72 this year. For this new year, I will be 73. What is your occupation? Are you related by blood or by in-law to any parties in this case, either to the accused or to any other parties? I do not have any indirect blood relation. The President. Now the Chamber invites you to provide a testimony of what you have heard, have known during the time you were at M13 office in Tpong, Kampong Speu province before 1975. The questions are: have you known the security office M13's location in Omlang? If you know, from when? The witness. From the beginning, I never heard of that name. I did not know there was an office M13, but in 1973, I was arrested and brought into M13. Then that's when I knew its location. Were you arrested and brought into the detention at office M13? How long were you detained there, and from when to when? And when were you released? The witness. I did rice farming there for about 1 year. I was arrested in 1973 in the dry season. In March or April. I do not clearly remember the calendar month, but it was the second lunar date in March or April to M13 office. The President. How long were you living there before you were released? I was there for about 1 year from my recollection, and then I was released to Posat province in 1974. The President. Can you describe to the Chamber about what you saw, you heard during the time of your living there, from your recollection? The witness. I was detained in that prison. I saw the torture activities, ill treatment on the prisoners in all forms. It's hard to describe. I saw both physical and emotional tortures, starvation on the prisoners. In each day I saw prisoners died. Every single day. There was never a day no prisoner died. The President. How big was the security office? How many hectares? The witness. It's hard to estimate. It was pretty large. Probably it was 100 meters square. That was in the detention center. And There were square pits, 3 meters deep, about 5, 6 or 7 pits, and it was covered with palm tree leaves, and the prisoners were put in those pits, including myself. We were detained in those pits. The president, judges on the bench, do you have any questions to pose to the witness? Here you have, the floor is yours. Judge Lavange.
Monsieur le Président.
Judge Lavergne, could we first of all ask the accused to stand up? Could we ask the accused to stand up?